Hello, all you lovely creatures of this earth. It's another episode of League Unlock, and it's another look at our post-spring rankings. This time we're going to the LEC over in Europe, and I gotta preface this again. It includes playoffs. This isn't just regular season. It's not the all-pro team. We're talking about playoff performances as well. So there are some swaps from what we had on our all-pro teams at the end of the regular season because most teams were playing 10 games. Not most teams. The top three played 10 games plus in the playoffs, so there is a lot to go off of.
Hey, there was a lot of playoff games and a lot of people stepping up their performance. And every time someone steps up, that means someone's got to be pushed down here. And that is exactly what was going on from the LEC playoffs. Lots of rising players, and someone's got to fall to take that spot here. We are going to dish it out. Another chance to get it right when we're talking about these all-pro teams, and another chance to disappoint.
And the beauty of this is everybody makes an all-pro team because you just go 10-1. The 10th all-pro team in the LEC. We should start making those. But let's start in the top lane, where this is an example of the consistency in the regular season. And even though Origin disappointed maybe a little in the playoffs, I think you're still talking about Alphari as the best, most consistent top laner throughout the entirety of the split in Europe.
I think you can look at some of the performances and some of the top players in the top lane in Europe and say, yeah, they can make a case to maybe start pushing towards that number one spot. But no one's approaching that level of play and that level of consistency that Alphari has brought to the Rift this split, and especially what he was able to accomplish on his own for Origin was such a massive boost for that squad, and what they were able to accomplish largely came off the backs of the performances that he was able to give the team and the stability in that top side that he was able to constantly provide for them.
This list for me, and Alphari, I think still is a deserving MVP. You could talk about, not to beat Jankos, but in that top three kind of area. But Wunder and Bwipo is, of course, where this list gets interesting. After the regular season, absolutely, you were talking about Bwipo. He's the man to be there. And then there was this little old best-of-5 series in the finals where Wunder absolutely smashed Bwipo. And especially with that series, and even before that, Wunder was stepping up in the previous series against Mad Lions. Just because of that straight head-to-head, you got to put Wunder ahead of him now in second.
You got to put Wunder at second. The way and the job that he has done for G2 all year, the type of role that he has played for this squad and the champions that he has been playing really does amplify his value in the system. And when you're comparing him to Bwipo and the playoff performances that went through, Wunder was a critical part of G2 coming up as the champions here on that side. And when you're looking at what went down for Bwipo, well, Bwipo did still play we did get to see Bwipo playing these different champions, and we did see against the Mad Lions, we got to see amazing Malphite play. But how much points can you really give the guy for hitting R on Malphite and chasing down? Oh, there's the ADC. Let me follow him. How many points do you want to give Bwipo really for that?
It was such a riding high moment when he has this Malphite, another kind of crazy pick. He dominates on it, and just Bwipo things, man. What a crazy top laner. He's flashing emotes everywhere. And then he was primed and ready to be at least second, maybe first after spring you're talking about. But that series against G2, boy, did it come crashing down quickly.
It was the exact opposite of what he had experienced the week before, in the sense that, you got past Mad Lions, you smashed your own lane assignment, you smashed that, and then outside of the game in the team fights, you were smashing it as that Malphite, hitting that big old R button, making sure Carzzy is not doing a single thing. And then you get to the next week, and Bwipo's impact was the exact opposite for the squad. Not only was he not playing to that high level and providing that level of difference making, he was the one causing the negative sides here for the Fnatic squad in that finals. And you can't put everything on his performance, but it certainly was a big factor in why they never got off the ground.
Anytime you're losing both sides of a matchup, especially when it's Zach Ornn, you're getting outclassed in that head-to-head. 4, 5, 6, a little bit of wiggle room. We have Dan, Finn, and then Arome. Dan, maybe you could say Finn stepped up a little bit more in the playoffs, but in the series against Origin, I think you were expecting more because he got slam dunked by Alphari. And Dan, listen, this is a lot of youth. This is basically 3 up-and-coming top laners that we might be talking about potentially cracking that top 3 in the near future. But you could really argue, I think Dan and Finn have to be ahead of Arome, but between them, you could argue either way.
Sure, I would accept either one in that kind of flip-flopping around here between who you put in that spot. But when you're looking at what they did for this split, what the level of play was from them, Finn is someone you would have expected maybe to hopefully take that next step, a little bit more into that upper echelon.
Rogue as a whole
that we have here. Right, and you didn't quite get that step, right? You saw the inconsistencies trying to reach that level. So we haven't quite got that with Finn, but still a lot of potential. And then Dan is someone that when we looked at the Misfits roster was one of the consistent contributing members for this squad. Yes, there's a lot of the focus is on Febiven, Razork as the rookie here, but definitely don't forget about the work that Dan was doing in the top side for Misfits. It was extremely important to what success they did have in the spring split.
And Otawamne comes in at number 7. He actually had the best split he's had in, I might even say, years on Schalke. He was, at times, when they were struggling, he was consistently the guy that people were talking about being stuck in ELO hell. He was putting up great performances, even though they were losing. And when things did sort of get back on track for Schalke and they looked like a competitive team, he continued to play relatively well. Fully expect to see him back in summer. One of the biggest and oldest veterans, especially in the top lane now with a guy like Soaz gone.
Yeah, and with the way that it seems that Schalke is heading as far as kind of a youth movement here with this roster, he seems to be one of the veteran players that is sticking with the squad to help groom them through this time. And look, his performance hasn't dropped off one little bit here. He has been a standout for the Schalke squad in a lot of their games, trying his very best to turn it around. And as we know, unfortunately, in Schalke games, at least until the end of the year, they weren't turning many of them around.
And he's a funny guy, He's kissing in interviews. I want more Otawamne around the studio. Bottom 3, Cabochard, Expect, and Sacre. Expect, obviously, not with Excel anymore. They're going differently in the top lane moving forward. And Cabochard, for all the times Vitality has struggled, it's kind of always been, yeah, but at least they have Cabo. They have that win condition of him in the top lane. And he was by no means the problem for Vitality this split, but he wasn't a win condition really because they didn't have any. They didn't have a win condition.
You're right. You're right on 2 fronts. They did not have almost any win conditions. And you're right that he wasn't the problem for this Vitality roster. The unfortunate situation is he wasn't the solution either. So he wasn't able to come in and rectify any of these mistakes here with that roster throughout his gameplay. And that's something that we've seen him do throughout his time on this organization. Just unfortunate not to see it this split.
Yeah, and there's a legit chance for a bounce back whenever Milica comes in and they actually have their solid roster. I think Cabochard still has the talent to climb a lot higher than number 8 on this list. We roll on to junglers, and when we talked about junglers in North America, it was Blabber and 9 other people. Jankos, it's not as dramatic an extent. There are some other really good junglers in EU, but it's pretty cut and dry. There's no chance you're putting anybody ahead of the back-to-back MVP in Jankos.
You said it right there. Back-to-back MVP. There's no reason to put anyone else in this spot. Jankos continuing that extreme form that we saw last year. He is I'm sure you could make some memes here about G2 wanting to go out and get maybe Dwayne B to role swap into jungle, maybe bringing over Tian type of situation. Other than that, you're not getting any better than having Jankos in the jungle for this squad. His personality, his in-game performances, everything across the board has been perfect for G2. It is the ideal fit, and this is the ideal LEC jungler.
It's rare that you actually get a jungler that can not only play, but excel on both tanks and carries, regardless of the meta. He's continually at the top of the standings, whether it's a meme about having to play Sejuani. He's really good at Sejuani. There's a reason when she's fully in the meta, they get insta-locked for G2. There was the Karthus era with him. We've seen him play Kiana. We've seen him play AP Shyvana and get 14 kills on it. It doesn't matter what the meta is. This guy is just an absolute madman in the jungle.
He is the king of the jungle when it comes to everything in the LEC. And this is that level of dominance that you said it. We see dominance in North America with Blabber at the very top. You see that level of dominance here in EU. But one of the big differences, yes, Jankos is at that dominant type of level, but there are more people hungry right behind him, nipping at the heels to say, look, we're pretty darn good too. And that is exactly the situation for the rest of the junglers.
So in the tier after Jankos, when you jump down, this is where you really see the playoff buff or the playoff changes because Mad Lions played a lot of games and it was all about Carzzy heading into playoffs, how great he is. But when the playoffs rolled around, it was Shadow that was the key player, the best player, and the game-changing player for Mad Lions, especially in both of their series against G2. You absolutely saw him step up. And for how much we've just praised Jankos, he got out jungled by Shadow in some of those games.
Shadow was a massive difference maker for the Mad Lions squad. And as we saw in the last couple of weeks of the split, you saw some more of those pop-off performances. You saw him taking his time, thinking it out, and then you saw the action come through. And man, the execution was crystal clear on the Mad Lions side. And a large part of that is exactly from Shadow's engages. You saw that in the playoffs continue against G2. And unfortunately, it runs out here, runs into some tough matches. But man, he really did step up his play. And this is one where, again, you want to be watching more Shadow. You want to be keeping an eye on how he continues to progress throughout these splits heading into summer.
I think we had him ranked either 9th or 10th probably coming into the split. And you know what? That's just, we didn't know too much about him. He didn't have much of a career that he'd played, you know, in the minor regions. Or not
we know about him now.
We know about him now.
Sure about that.
And it's usually mid laners that we're talking about up and coming, but it has been junglers this split in the LEC. But after Shadow, we got to acknowledge what Selfmade was doing before G2, because right up to that series, he was absolutely smashing a lot of these matches for Fnatic. Deserves a top 3 praise and something you can talk about for what he did in spring.
And this is one of the tough situations because, look, you either were going to have Selfmade or you were going to have Shadow. And I think Shadow just did a little bit more in the playoffs to really bolster where he would be in these power rankings. But Selfmade absolutely stepped it up. For about a 2-week stretch after we did our power rankings, Selfmade and Nemesis consistently made us look like fools for not having them higher up in our list. And this is where they come through again with the performances. Selfmade, you got to find your spot here. He really has been a big difference and a big change of pace from what Broxo brought to this Fnatic squad. And as he continues to develop that synergy with the rest of the lineup, with Whippo in the top side, I think that it can only get better here on Fnatic.
Xerxes and Razork are two guys, Razork in particular, he was getting so much praise, deservedly so, but he did tail off a bit at the end of the regular season and then in their playoff series, just not playing at all to the level that we saw throughout spring. So he slides to number 5 after spring, 1 behind Xerxes, and both of them are still great junglers, but the top 3 for what they did in playoffs deserve to be higher.
Right. When you're thinking about exactly how you want this to go down with these junglers, you wanted more here in that back half of Razor for sure, because what he offered at the beginning of the split, fantastic, very standout performances. But when you got towards the back half, they were not up to the same level. And yes, I still would happily vote for him, obviously, as the rookie of the split type of situation, but needed a little bit more here. And that's where you start to fall into the category of, yes, these guys, Xerxes himself, did give us good performances, but they fall into the wanting more type of category here, where you know that they could have offered a bit more to the squads. And if the squads found that little bit of that next level, you don't know exactly how high they could have reached.
If you redo Rookie of the Split after playoffs, probably goes to Shadow, and deservedly so. Inspired was the young jungler that everyone was expecting to leap to the next level, but then Shadow and Razor kind of stole the spotlight from him. So Inspired goes to number 6 because Rogue as a whole, a little bit disappointing considering people had at minimum top 4 aspirations for this roster. And I think almost across the board, save for maybe Larson, it was a little bit of an underwhelming performance, but Inspired still a spot ahead of Cadril at number 7.
Yeah, and the only thing that inspired is you would have said it's the potential, right? You wanted to see that next step forward in the development. You didn't see it at all this split. It was more of actually a regression, I would think, in some of the mistakes that we had seen before.
As we go to the bottom of the list, Trick is not a two-time back-to-back MVP level jungler.
Unfortunately, not anymore.
He was not the answer for SK. He is not the future. Skeens had a tough go of things because he didn't have the mid laner he was expecting, but he has played with Saken before, but then Selfie came in. Vitality is just a mess, so Skeens is in at 9, and then Lurox at 8, Kadril at 7. Lurox, after his first week, he actually got much better. Excited to see him to continue to develop. He's another guy who could be climbing up these rankings as a new young jungler in Europe.
And look, again, never trying to be on the negative side of things, always trying to prop players up. When you're looking at the jungle pool for the EU 1 through 10, you're at least going, you know what? Okay, I can accept this level here. You can't say the same for North America at the very least.
No, I mean, Trick might get MVP in North America. Who knows?
No,
that's not fair to Blabber. Trick might be number 2 in North America. We'll give him that.
Yeah,
a distant number 2. Mid laners. Oh, sign him in. Bring him in. Mid laners, always a fun time in Europe because it's completely stacked no matter how many run over to North America. And bless his heart, the man, the myth, the legend, Luca the Bazooka. Perks, he roll swaps back to mid, and immediately there's no argument. He's the most dominant laner and the best mid laner in the LEC. A lot of that is because last year's best mid laner is on his team playing AD carry, but Perks is number 1, no question.
Yeah, hey, it helps when your competition in Caps is in playing something totally different in that one. But when you're looking at what he brought to the table this split, what he brings for G2 and what he brings into that 1v1 lane matchup every single time he's loading into the Rift, it is domination from Perks. Luca the Bazooka, you said it, just annihilating folks in lane, out of lane. That was his job here. He really made sure that he was picking up a major advantage individually in his lane, and he was also making sure that, hey, who I'm going up against, they're not going to be a factor as we get later into these games. That domination came through big time. It was a different style of domination than we had seen from Caps in the mid lane for G2, and whether, again, you want to have those discussions about role swapping, that's a different story entirely. But when you're looking at the story of what the gameplay was in the mid for G2 this split, it is absolutely 5 out of 5 stars, perfection from Perks.
And he didn't really need to step up in that series against Fnatic. You would say he got the edge of Nemesis still in the finals, but it wasn't hard enough of a shellacking in that head-to-head matchup for you to move Nemesis out of that second best mid laner in EU, especially when guys like Febivin kind of dipped off at the end. Nukeduck, I just don't think is in that conversation anymore. So Nemesis still comes in at number 2. And Larson is a guy who was one of the members of Rogue who stepped up in a way in the playoffs, performed a lot better, and was still playing at an incredibly high level throughout all of spring, so he deserves that top 3 finish.
And I'll happily put Larson in that top 3. The performances that he gave and what he was able to do with everything else that was going around with Rogue, I thought that, again, everyone else, you'd hope that they would continue to make that step forward. You would hope that you would see more potential come through. You didn't see that really with the rest of this Rogue lineup. Larson was the one that, albeit a small step, I think he did take a step forward in his career and ability to play this game. I think that he certainly is the bright spot when you're talking about Rogue. And when you're looking at the rest of these mid laners, he is certainly one that benefited, I think, from everyone else other than Perks and Selfmade, really not, establishing themselves or differentiating themselves enough with their playoff performances.
Yeah, and the 3 mid laners below him, you talk about Nukeduck. I don't know, maybe people think 6 is low for him, but he's very passive. I'll compare it to Froggen a little, except he's not putting out the damage numbers. He's not holding on to the carry pants on this Origin lineup. It's a rare case where your mid laner is almost your 3rd carry with how much Alfari stepped up in spring, because upset's number 1. Alfari's getting all these carries. Nukeduck, you're stuck on Soraka and Ornn a lot of these games, my man.
And it's a symptom that, hey, Nemesis fell victim to us kind of overlooking him a little bit, given I'm playing a lot of Orin games, and Orin kind of blends into, yeah, you're playing Orin. What else do you want here type of situation. And when you're looking at the games that Nuke Duck played, or the champions that he played, a couple of them fall into that type of category. But when you're looking at the performance that he gave, it leaves you wanting more. And as Origin, yes, you do have Upset as your main carry, and the way that Alfari has stepped up in the past. Nuke Duck, you still had to be looking at what he did and what he was giving away as far as the advantages maybe going to the other side. That's where you would say, like, the bleeding needed to stop a little bit more with Nuke Duck, and it just didn't for Origin, and that led to a lot of the faults.
And Nuke Duck, the biggest veteran when it comes to mid laners and just general pro players in the LEC. But Humanoid and Abadaga, who are 5 and 7 on this list, remember, they came into the split the same time as Nemesis in 2019 spring. That was kind of the new wave of rookie mid laners. And Humanoid, to his credit, he was getting a lot of criticism early on in the split because he did not look good. And you've heard some of his team members kind of saying he was trying to lead the team and direct them. That was taking a lot of his mental capacity when he's playing, but he really turned it on towards the end. And in playoffs, even though he had some 0-6 Nautilus games against Perks, he still performed pretty well over playoffs, deserves a top 5 nod. And Abadaga had some of the best damage percentage numbers of all mid laners. He's getting a little bit more consistent, which is the key for him.
We were excited about this class of young mid laners coming in last year with all the things and with all the EU mids that NA had successfully poached away type of situation.
Job well done, boys.
We had been thinking Nemesis was the one that was going to be the only one to really step up. Saw Humanoid, you had seen flashes of it. Same with Abadaga, flashes of that brilliance, flashes of that potential. Nowhere near consistent enough from these two at points last year. Humanoid goes to World, and you were hoping, man, going to pick up all this experience. He's going to lane against Doin B, of course, the classic. Didn't really see that progression come through at all for the majority of this split until probably, you would say, the latter half, last couple of weeks, and that playoffs. You really did start to see maybe a bit of that in-game maturity come through from Humanoid in some of these tighter pressure situations. You saw him play better and respond a little bit smarter, I thought was one growth that we saw. And as you said, consistency is going to be the big key for both of these players moving forward. Abadaga had a couple of standout performances here on the Schalke roster, really did help them get what wins that they did, and especially towards the back half of the split. But certainly consistency is going to be the key in both of these young mid laners' growth.
You want to talk about consistency? How about number 8, your boy Mickey? I think he had enough good performances to go at number 8 ahead of Gen X and Selfie. But of those 3 mid laners, Gen X probably on SK next split, Selfie and Mickey. Well, we know Mickey's not on Excel, and Selfie probably not going to be the starting mid laners. So I assume Gen X will return, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's the safe assumption here. A couple of pop-offs from Mickey this split, but certainly not enough for Excel to push themselves into the playoff picture far enough. And as far as you're concerned about, what he brought to the table, was it enough to try and say, give me Mickey 2, the summer sequel? No, it really wasn't enough. And that's one of those ones where, look, I wasn't on board with the Mickey signing in the first place for Excel and what they were trying to revamp here. I got sold on it a little bit. Sometimes those flashes of brilliance came through and you were thinking, okay, maybe they can put something together. Not consistent enough, as you put it, and just never came through for the Excel squad.
Seduced by the outplay, I believe, is what they call for Mickey's entire career. 80 carries in EU, always a fun time. And with Perks leaving, it was Reckless retaking the throne. I think you'd be crazy to argue against him maintaining that first team all-pro status, even though we had other players step up. The top 3, Upset was the featured carry for Origin and was incredibly reliable, which is the key word for an 80 carry. Are you going to be in the right position to do maximum damage in team fights? Upset is almost always there. And number 3, Carzzy, stepping into the scene, and we know this kid has a personality, and he has backed it up on the Rift. He is not playing a passive game. Even if they're not winning lane phase, as soon as he has 2 items, he's ready to fight. anywhere on the map.
Yeah, can't ignore Reckless at number 1. You're very right. Reclaiming that throne that Perks had claimed from him. Reckless back on top as far as the ADCs are concerned in the European region. And when you're looking elsewhere, yeah, Upset is our big time potential, big time damage carry coming through. All the fundamentals crystal clean on Upset. When you look at Carzzy, it's all about the attitude. It's about the mental. It's about the aggression that he brings to this game, and the flair that he plays with. That's what I've fallen in love with. And I know a lot of people have fallen in love with the way that Carzzy plays this game, plays that role. Really, really a game changer for this Mad Lions team. When he starts getting that gold, he starts putting that experience under his belt. It is a whole world of pain for the other team.
And let's give a little bit of credit, because when we did All Pro at the end of the regular season, you probably had Caps 6 or 7 maybe, based on what he did in the regular season. But now we got him climbing up to number 4, because the dude is playing Kog'Maw and Vayne in playoff series and absolutely styling on people. A lot of that in part to Mickey following him around on Yumi, Janna, and Lulu. But Caps turned into Claps again in the playoffs. It took a while, but he did come in the 2 biggest series of the season for G2.
It looked better. It's still not going to change the fact that I think we still would like to see and still can discuss the facts about talking about adding in some more of these AP champions down to the bottom side, playing
not
with
Ziggs,
the idea.
Not Ziggs.
Yeah, well, no, okay, yeah, no, sorry. I'll rephrase that. Some of the okay, no, I can't do that because I guess she falls into that category too. I can't separate Syndra and Ziggs, unfortunately. The mages AP, you can't get it away. But anyways, hopefully maybe some more of those champions on the bottom side. Maybe the idea of throwing, hey, pick this one, pick that one. It's going to be Caps in the mid lane this time. It's going to be Perks down bot lane. I still think that is an idea and a strategy that G2 should play around with that idea with. But when you're talking about Caps as the ADC stepping up, look, 200 years of Felios, maybe not the best choice for him given the mobility issues. But when you're talking about Kog'Maw, with his range, you're talking about Vayne with the dashes, dumbling through. That is exactly his style. The damage, that is Caps' style. And the damage that was coming through, that was exactly what G2 wanted to see from Caps in the bottom side.
Yeah, they might have stumbled on something there. Would have loved to have seen Caps match up against some other international bot lanes, because I don't think they'd have as good a time against, I don't know, Teddy and Effort or any Chinese bottom lane. It might be a rough go for them. But Caps goes up to number 4, deservedly so. Hans Sama in at 5, Patrick in at number 6. Different roles for their teams. Patrick was the guy on XL, and he performed. We saw on Origin, he was not the issue. He was really consistent there, and he hasn't dropped a beat since he came over to Excel. And Hans Sama, meanwhile, obviously a pretty sizable upgrade over Woolite and Hikyu, whoever Rogue was running last year.
Yeah, and I think for Hans Sama, we haven't seen him hit his exact peak yet with Rogue. We talked about this lineup underperforming for the most part, not taking that next step forward. Hans Sama kind of was in that realm of, I wasn't expecting much from him as far as everything. I just wanted to see him get closer to that Hans Sama that we had seen of old on the Misfits rosters. And we did see many more flashes of that this split and a lot more consistency towards that level of play from Hans Sama. So I'm feeling pretty positive about hopefully seeing that continue as a trend for summer. When you talk about Patrick, yes, he was someone that did step into those big shoes for Excel to be the main featured carry for this lineup. And he did fill that role pretty darn well sometimes. But certainly is one of those cases, again, where you look at him and you look at Upset coming to the league about the same time, and you're talking about how much you hope for them to keep growing. Patrick's career path and the potential hasn't quite matched up. And yes, that's a hard ask when you're talking about a player as talented and skilled as Upset, but that's what these teams are hoping these players turn into. And right now, Patrick is still got some work to do.
He hasn't had quite the luxury of teams quite as good as Upset. Also, especially
okay,
as soon as Origin gets good, they say, Patrick, see it, pal. Even though they made finals with him, so still pretty good. Patrick's had a great young career. Crown Shot is the living embodiment of stuck in ELO hell right now. He's in at number 7. SK, I don't see them making any noise in summer, but Crown Shot is a clear cut above, I think, the bottom 3 when you're talking about in order. Comp, who he couldn't do much on this Vitality roster. B-Boy and Inax. Having Inax at 10 is a little bit rough. I don't think there's any really bad AD carries in Europe right now.
No, this has been all for me. Everybody gets a passing grade at this point,
except for Forgiven. That's a big fat F.
Okay,
big fat F.
Yeah, a big fat F for Forgiven. There we go.
Yeah.
Fits. Yeah, everyone but Forgiven is absolutely getting the passing grade. Like, Forgiven doesn't get the attendance. That's the number one.
Yeah, that's 90%. 90% of your grade is showing up.
Gotta be there showing up. And hey, all these guys did show up here getting these passing grades. You're right. Inax at the very bottom certainly kind of feels like the short end of the stick here. Someone's got to pick up number 10, and he's the guy to get it here. Certainly better performances, and they drop him in NA. I think there's some teams that would feel okay making that type of swap.
If we're importing Ica, like Inax, he's definitely got a chance. LEC supports. Mickey comes in at number 1 because he's asked to do a lot on G2. They see Caps dying a lot, and they say, listen, I hope you're cool being a Janna Lulu 2-trick. I hope that's fine, Mickey. And he's like, hey, whatever, man. Let's win. So he does so much for G2.
He is ultimately the guy. I know a lot of people don't understand people that like to play support. A lot of people don't gel with that mindset of I'm going to be the caretaker. I'm going to be one making sure everything goes right. Mickey's your example of when you're doing it perfection, you're getting everything right here, the level of success, the wins that you can put up here, that's what matters the most to Mickey. And that is where it comes through in his play. Definitely the caretaker for G2, the caretaker for Caps, coming through in the clutch in these playoffs. We give Caps the credit here, getting on that Kog'Maw, the champion that pushed that W. You're never going to be in range for people to attack you type of situation. You have to absolutely tip your cap and give credit to the performance that Mickey did these playoffs. After the Craps game, a lot of people put the attention on making sure that Caps' performance stepped up. Mickey himself, his performance and his ability to make sure that he was, providing that level of care here on the Rift certainly stepped up as well, and was a big difference in why we saw G2 get back to the form that we're accustomed of seeing G2 stomp fools at.
Yeah, and when all 5 are playing at a high level, that's when you get the truly world-class team. Kaiser and Hylissang make out the top 3. Kaiser, another huge key cog for the Mad Lions, moving around the map, getting things involved, and playing very aggressively. Him and Carzzy, they gave it to Caps and Mickey, at least in the first series that they played in the laning phase. They are not afraid of anyone. Hylissang was better in the playoffs, even though he dies a lot. What he was doing for his team, I think, warrants. He wasn't in the top 3 when we did all pro squads, but Fnatic as a whole looking a lot better, helped him climb up a bit.
The way that this one felt that, hey, when Caps gets in trouble, Mickey's there with the Band-Aid, ready to go, get him back in action. With Kaiser and Carzzy, it felt more like when Carzzy steps in here to do the damage, Kaiser's right there, right behind him to punch you again right after he throws.
Live or die together, pal. Exactly. Brothers in arms.
That type of aggression coming through from the Mad Lions bot lane. Love to see that from them. And Hylissang here, this is one where Hilly got overlooked in our original power rankings. That was more so just kind of like everybody else. You kind of get blinded sometimes by a bit of the Hilly int. And yeah, I know it's
bright.
A bit stronger.
Sometimes it's really bright.
Sometimes you get a little bit too into it because, yes, I know the meme kind of carries the majority of that weight than more so than the gameplay of Hylissang. There were still a couple of games that did play directly into that type of situation.
There was a lot of unnecessary deaths. There's dying for trades or sacrificing for your team, and there's just dying for that.
Right, and but I think that he didn't get enough credit here for exactly how much Reckless proved himself to be the top of the ADCs this split. I think, again, a large part of that is this bot lane, the duo here getting to that level of play. And as well, on his own aspect, the things that he was doing for this Fnatic squad and what we saw later implemented into the playoffs, this amazing inting Trundle pick here, things like that. Hilly definitely deserves some more props than he got originally in our pro rankings, so happy to get him up one here.
You got fasting Senna and inting Trundle. That's just the ultimate dream combo.
And the Zillion. Can't forget that Zillion.
Harder to int when you have 2 lives, though. Danik is in at number 4. He was top 3 and misfits again as a whole. Disappointed in playoffs and the end of the regular season. So he slides out of the top 3. Vander, same spot as his buddy, Hansama. Vander is quietly a guy who's been around for 5-6 years now and continues to play at a high level.
I was going to say, he hasn't reached the peaks here as far as being one of the top ranked guys, but you'd be hard pressed to put him outside of, rank 7 almost any of these years that he's been playing on the big stage, finding himself here in the top 5. Tip your cap on that one.
Yeah, happy to see him still playing. And Destiny, I don't think you're disappointed with this move that Origin made. I mean, he was a Nautilus one trick in their series against G2 all 4 games. But
an
listen,
FPX emote one.
The FPX emote is worth the move enough, but I think you're happy with him overall. He's going to continue to grow, get accustomed to playing in Europe. Happy for him, happy for Origin. Torre is in at number 7 ahead of Limit, and we're putting Steel back in at 9 because I'm not touching Jack Troll, man. Jack Troll doesn't deserve top 10. Give it to Steel back. Anymore. Please play him in summer.
Jack Troll's just getting ready for that big old NA contract to come through. That's the situation here. Getting
Immortals?
Ready for that big old North American.
Immortals?
Oh my God, no.
Oh, he's not French. He's not French. Can't come to Immortals.
But you said Destiny. That's the big one for me when you're looking at these players. Overall, I think that the hope was that it was going to be higher for Origin and himself. That you were hoping that it was going to succeed a little bit more. But I don't think that you can be necessarily disappointed by any way that the growth that you've shown this split, and let alone showing that, look, there is still a lot of potential and a good player here to keep working with and growing under this Origin brand. Seeing Destiny and what he's going to be putting out on the Rift in summer and furthermore makes me feel good about this Origin roster. Because I tell you what, you're not making this move to acquire Destiny for spring. You're not acquiring him going, this is the piece that's going to make us world championship level right now. That's not how that works. This is a growth here, and we're going to see it continue to develop for Origin.
And he's a guy who he seems very vocal and aggressive in his calls, which is something, as we know, the playstyle of Origin desperately needs, and that came to fruition multiple times throughout spring. But support not quite as stacked as some of the other roles in the LEC. But at the top of the table, there's a whole lot of playmakers, and excited to see the youth grow in pretty much every position in summer. A lot of these guys still going to be their second splits overall, and you know that the growth is going to be there. Still most excited for Mad Lions, though. That team's fun to watch.
It's a fun team to watch, a fun region to watch here, and fun region to watch. I say fun. It's a different fun than North America, of course. This is fun as far as competitive fun. And when you're looking at this one here, the ask is going to be very different here for these squads moving into summer for the LEC. The task is, of course, to get at least one victory in the World's Finals. You got to get to the finals to even have a chance to improve upon
somebody else's turn. Fnatic tried 0-3, G2 0-3. I mean,
I don't care whose turn it is to try and get that one victory against the LPL, because all that matters is that, you got to get that one victory in that World Finals. So you got to do it like North America, baby. Coast big time underneath the bar, and then you get up here, and all we got to do is get one team out of groups. How hard is that? Yeah. We got to be able to do that.
Get a team to semis? Greatest year that North America will ever have competitively.
Man, I had an interaction with a fan after that, and I was like, feeling good. North America, we're going to be climbing. We're going to be getting some respect finally. Oh, well, it has not been that since then.
Yeah, next Worlds, things didn't go so well. That's it today for LEC player rankings. We'll be doing LCK eventually, and we will recap the LPL finals getting going on Saturday. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you guys on the Flippity Flop.